Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Thursday night tarot talks. And tonight we're going to look at some books. I have 22 books on my table. And this is a video that I've wanted to do for a while. I did a previous video, which I will link. I'll put a card up after this one has rendered, after it's uploaded. And it was kind of a mishmash of books that are not companion books and tarot books in general. And so I was thinking that there are so many beautiful companion books that I didn't get to share with you. So I want to kind of work on that over the next 2 Thursdays. And then I thought we could actually do another week where we look at little white books, because there's a few little white books out there that are amazing. And so that's a topic that I want to include, but that's not tonight. Tonight we're going to look at large books, and yeah. So perhaps over the next 3 weeks we'll get this all wrapped up. Hello, Liberius. Good morning. Good morning from the Philippines, right? And Ange, hello. Hello from Quebec. You're in Quebec, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes my memory is not the greatest. So yeah, so 22 tarot companion books, and I have a brief criteria. And what my intention is to have a look through some of the things that I really like in these companion books, and then I will post a poll on my community tab. And then next week I'm going to actually choose the top 10 of these 22 books. And if there are other books you want me to have a look at to include in this top 10, then you could put that in the description box below, or you could bring that to my attention tonight. I know a lot of people, especially little white books, they put away, but there are so many excellent companion books out there. And yes, Quebec, that I think this is definitely a worthwhile topic to explore and to share. You may have many of these decks, some of them you may not. I might have different versions of the books than you do, because I know sometimes there's different editions of the books, especially if you have an indie deck. So let's get started. Let's get started with hello, Essence. Welcome. Welcome. So I just wanted to kind of go through my criteria, and by the time we get to next week, I will have definitely kind of ironed this down. So the first thing for me that's important in a large guidebook is that I want to understand the artwork. I want to know a little bit about what's in the picture. So I don't need in the description of the cards a rehash of what is a standard Rider-Waite-Smith meaning. I want to know about your artwork. I want to understand the symbols and why you drew it the way you drew it, and why you chose the symbols that you chose, if you're mixing it up a little bit. So that's something that's really important. I want to know why this deck was necessary. So that might be a bit of a story about the creator and how they created the deck and why and how the deck came into being. I find all this information fascinating. And one of the things that I find a lot of in a lot of guidebooks is we don't get much information about the creator themselves. We need to go on a kind of a Google search to find out more about them, about their biography. And even then, I'm surprised how many creators on their websites have, their biography is this long. And I would love to know more about some of them. Why? Because especially, we talked about this in the last few weeks, if you're creating a deck that is particular to a certain culture, it would be nice to know that either you grew up in that culture, or you have lived in that culture, or you have some, I'd like to know what your connection is to that culture. And just general, I find it fascinating, to know where people live, where they've come from, especially if there's plants or animals included in the deck, and all of that is really interesting to me. So the next thing is that I want to learn something, right? I want to feel like I'm going through the guidebook and it's like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Thank you for sharing that with me. Again, a guidebook that just is a rehash of standard tarot meanings is of pretty much no use to me. I can get a much better resource from a general tarot book. So I want to learn something. Hello, Patrice. Thanks for joining me again today. The book needs to be navigable. So I'm sure that some of you have guidebooks where it's really hard to, and usually this is with an oracle deck, I find, but it's hard to figure out where the page is for the card that you're looking at. And so that's really an important quality. And the quality of the book to a certain degree, I love it when you open a book and the book stays open. You know, there's a lot of, especially well, some of the newer Llewellyn ones are getting better in that way. But, you know, you open a book and then it just snaps closed like that. I really like to have a book that will lay open, especially if I'm working with a spread where I've got the cards beside me and I'm looking at a page and I'm actually using the book. It's really nice if the book stays open. And then the last thing that I was considering is that I don't need color pictures, but it's certainly nice to have a thumbnail. It does not have to be a color book for sure, especially if it's got quality content, but to have a little thumbnail of the pictures is really useful because sometimes I take the books if I'm going away for the day and I know I'm sitting in the Faerie lineup or something and I don't take the cards with me. It's nice to have a thumbnail in the book to refer to. And there's quite a few books out there that actually don't have the pictures in the book. So these are all things that I've been thinking of. And if there's some other criteria that feels that I've overlooked, please make sure you mention it. And I will add that into the list. So like I said, if you weren't here when I started, I have 22 books and we're going to have a look at them briefly. And then next week, I'm actually going to narrow down these 22 books and hopefully you guys don't add too many more to my list. And then decide what my top 10 are based on these criteria and anything else that we come up with tonight. So I'm really looking forward to your input as well too. Oh, you bought W2F's Tarot. The book closes. Oh, wow. That's too bad because it was the most beautiful binding. I'll make sure next week I bring it to the table and then I'll let you know what the publisher is. Okay, so these are in no particular order, and I just want to go through and tell you what it is that I really like about these guidebooks, and because some of these decks, a couple of them anyway, I either had just purchased the cards with the little white book, or yeah, I think that was the case. So a few of these I had just had the cards with the little white book, and then I became aware that there was more content available, and so I actually repurchased the deck just for the larger guidebook. So this is the first one that I want to talk about. And this is not a deck that I use a lot. So I have a lot to go through tonight. So if you it'd be great if you put at Integrative Healing with Sadhana, so I make sure that I see your comment, and of course I'll read back the chat later. So this deck, I have both the deck with the borders and without the borders, and this guidebook, I believe it came in the new Llewellyn box with the borderless deck, and I actually prefer the deck with the borders. And I have done a video about that, so you can refer to that video itself. The thing that is really nice in this book, if you're not aware of this deck, in the minors, there is a story that runs ace through 10 in each of the minor suits. And you can read it based on basic Rider-Waite-Smith associations. But if you have the story that runs through the ace through 10, then you have this beautiful layer that brings in so much more, and there's so much more information. And you don't get that in the little white book. You just get the basic card description. And so this large guide, and this one is by Barbara Moore. One of the things I want to do in the top 10 is only have one Barbara Moore guidebook. And if I have like a couple of Gina, I don't know if I have other doubles here of the same author. Like if I have 2 Leeza Robertson guidebooks, I'm going to make sure there's just one by Leeza Robertson and things like that. So that was a really big seller for me in this guidebook, because you get something completely different than is offered in this small book. The other thing, and I believe you get most of them in the little white book, not all of them, is the spreads that are at the back. And, oh, I didn't write this down. I want to write this. This will be my number 6 or so, is that I find it really interesting if the creator has unique spreads for that particular deck. And I have done quite a few of the ones for this one, and I've included it in videos, in a video. I've done a couple videos about this deck actually. And the spread that I found the most interesting was, she calls it the fairy ring. And this was the first time I'd actually done this spread. And that's where you separate the deck into wands, cups, swords, pentacles, court cards, and majors. And so you have 6 piles of cards, and then you shuffle the individual cards, and then there's a question for each of those numbers. And she calls it the fairy ring spread. But I really, really like that spread, and I've done that spread quite a few times with other decks in other ways, and I've just found it's a really interesting way to read the energy of a deck. So that was something that I got from this guidebook. So that's the Mystic Fairy Tarot. On a similar, so that one is included with the deck in the large Llewellyn box. I want to talk about the Alice Tarot. This is my only Baba Studios deck. And I have a couple, I think I have one on pre-order. So if you have been watching my channel, you know that I did 2 videos on Dame Darcey's Alice Tarot. And in those 2 videos, I took my annotated Alice and I went through all of Tennille's pictures and matched up Dame Darcey's Queen Alice Tarot with Alice in Wonderland, and then through the Looking Glass. So I separated the deck into the 2 books, and then put the deck in order that it appears. Well, Karen Mahoney in this book does that at the end of the book. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. So at the back of this book, she has the cards that are in the order that they appear in the 2 books. So, which is exactly what I had done before I got this book, before I got this deck with Dame Darcey's deck. And so I really, really appreciate this. The other brilliant thing about this particular guidebook, which I've mentioned, is that she really does a great job of weaving in the Alice story with the Rider-Waite-Smith. And it's not separate, it's like, it's easy to flow between the layers. There's a video that I did on storytelling. I believe I call it storytelling in the tarot. And this is definitely, like, these Alice decks are a really good way to weave in, to learn, if you know the stories, to weave in story with tarot and to start to bring in other layers to your deck. So anyway, this book is just, it's a beautiful quality. It has black and white pictures. It has colored pictures. There's all kinds of beautiful spreads. This is definitely going to be in the top 10 for sure. Let me see. I see my name here. So Jamie, hello, Jamie. Kyle's here. Hello. Welcome. Intuitive Tarot by Tamsin. Hello. Oh, thank you. Essence, Kyle. Great. Is there anybody that I missed? I just don't want to miss anybody. Okay, so those two are really easy for me to talk about. And I'm sure there's others that kind of fit into that same story weaving situation. I was really intrigued with this deck. This isn't, yeah, this deck. This is an older deck. And I'm trying to think why I initially purchased it. I really appreciated the artwork. I've also done a video on this one, and I can put I'll put up cards later if you want to watch this in the playback later. And this is an example of where I had the cards with the little white book. And I believe those ones had borders on them. And then was this last year? Oh my goodness, what year is this one? I think it might have been last year. This came out, 2019. This is the new edition, and it came out with this amazing guidebook. And this is one of those guidebooks that has it's sewn, and so it stays open. And it has a beautiful description of what is going on in the practice and the ritual. So in the little white book that comes with just the cards, you don't get any information on the pagan practices that appear in this deck, which I found totally confusing because I didn't know what some of the practices were. And I just really, when I saw that this was coming out with the guidebook, I knew that was an example of a deck where you need to have the big book. You need to have the big book to really understand the deck, unless you participate in these practices and they're really familiar to you. I also love the artwork in this deck. And I think this is one of my favorite cards. Anyway, this is it's a really, really beautiful guidebook. Aloha, Jonathan. So those of you that are just arriving, I'm not announcing my top 10 tonight. I have 22 books on the table, and I'm going through just kind of sharing with you what I like, what I don't like. And next week, I'm going to cut these 22 down to 10. And I'm also going to put up a poll on my community tab. And if you have other books you want to kind of throw into the top 10, let me know. And so next week I'll do that. Here is the Bonefire Tarot. And I believe that this deck came out first and then the guidebook came out later. And so those people who had it as an indie deck had to buy the book separately, but now with the shifter version of the deck, this comes in the box. Now, I can compare this guidebook to a little bit to WTF is Tarot in the way that the creator was not really experienced with tarot, was very, very new to tarot, and somehow just really connected and created a deck that really spoke to a lot of people and resonated with a lot of people. I am shocked, actually, that somebody who wasn't a tarot aficionado wrote such profound and connected descriptions and was able to weave in so I don't know if you know this deck, but there is this symbol appears in every single card. It's a little bit like Where's Waldo, right? You need to find the bonfire. And part of working with this deck for me, where does the bonfire appear in each of the cards? And how does that affect the reading? And Gabi, Angus-West, she did such a good job with this. The other thing about this book is that she details the journey of the deck and how the deck was created and the layers and her experience and the beginning and the failure and the coming back of the deck. And so that tends to draw me in, and it makes me want to work with the deck. It makes me appreciate the artwork. It makes me feel more connected to the deck. And when a creator includes that kind of a description at the beginning, I feel more compelled, especially if, sometimes we do tend to get a few decks at the same time. And when there's a story like that, that really tends to draw me in. And it reminded me a little bit of, bear with me, 22 books is a lot of books to have on the table. This one, which is another guidebook that drew me in because of the creatrix. Creatrix. I'm just going to say creator because sometimes I'm not sure what the gender of the creator is. Robin. I loved her story and I felt so deeply connected. I guess I should say, I want to be really clear tonight which ones are extra, which ones cost extra, and which ones actually come with the cards. So of the 4 we've done so far, the only one that is extra is the Alice Tarot from Bubba Studios. This does not come with the cards. The cards come in a box with a little white book. This is an extra publication. And you can see by the edges of this book, it's been well read and well worn. Robin tells her story about working for Llewellyn, and she details her journey about going to Okinawa and living in Okinawa and how the cards came to be and how she was on this tiny little island in Japan. And there were no tarot cards there, and that was the place that this deck came to be. And I remember that story, like that connection drew me in. It's like what sold the deck for me. I was looking at the time, this was my first deck that I really started to work with. And if you go back, I've done a video on my first tarot deck, and this was the one. And because I had lived in Japan for 3 years, because I was looking for a deck that was not a straight up RWS, it just fit the bill on so many levels. I loved all of the pagan symbology and the suit of swords with all those butterflies and the capes on the court cards. It just really, really drew me in. And one of the things I said at the beginning tonight was that I want to understand the artwork, and I want to understand why you had to put a blue cap on this guy if normally he doesn't have a cap at all or something, right? I want to understand the artwork. And she has put so much detail. It's almost too much detail in this book. And I find that this is a tremendous reference book for working with other tarot decks. Like it's a really, really solid book. And I believe it's been a while since I've actually read this. Looks like I've read it in the bathtub a few times. I try not to do that anymore, but there was a time when the first 3 kids were little, and I would fall asleep in the bathtub all the time. And I have many, many books that are ruined from falling in the bath, but I don't tend to do that anymore. So yes, this is the book. So at the end, she has really interesting stories about how she reads and how to guide yourself into a meditation and how to do a clearing. And there's actually pieces here that you could read and record and do. So yeah, this is an excellent resource. So this is one that's for sure going to be in the top 10. And that Alice Tarot book is going to be up there as well too. I may as well just, I'm going to bring these 2 big heavy books over here. Jonathan, do you also have the Tarot Quick and Easy? It uses the Robin Wood deck. I have the complete tarot kit, and maybe that's where I saw the Robin Wood pictures, because in the complete tarot, no, it's not in there. I have a deck, and I don't know which one it is, and it does have the Robin Wood pictures in it, but yeah, sorry, I can't think of which one it is. So I have 2 really large books here. I've shared these before, and I know that when Simon did his top 5 that he shared this book. This is the most unbelievable companion book. It's expensive. It does not come with the deck, obviously, but it is one of those books that I would never read in the bathtub. Let's say that for sure. But it just, just to get that intimately into the mind of the creator, that the creator would have all of these early versions of the artwork available to put into the book, and to take you on the journey through the creation of every single card. Love, love, love this picture of the 16 faces of the court cards. I mean, just to have this page of the 16 faces of the court cards is it's so very helpful. And then if you actually are studying this book and you look at a page like this, and you can go, oh yeah, that's the King of Cups, and this is the figure from such and such a card. I found it really, it's absolutely an amazing, amazing book. And the thing about this book is that the only thing I would have to say is it's very specific to the deck. So it's not a book that would give you much reference to other books. And perhaps the very best companion books are going to do both. They're going to take you deep into an awareness and appreciation of the deck, and they're going to confirm and to expand and deepen your knowledge of the general gist of tarot as well too. And in a way, oh my God, I just love this book. Look, and it gives you these close-ups. It's just such a stunning, stunning, stunning book. So that's the Deviant Moon. Oh, I'm just going to read what Kyle said. Another thing I like is when the creator writes about what the cards mean to them. Oh yeah, for sure. I because we all see the images in different ways. And if you can build in a layer from another person, so like WTF is tarot is a really good example of that. And that's what I'm saying. I want to learn something. So that was one of the things I said at the beginning. Like, I just don't want a rehash of something that I already know. When I was starting to do past life readings, and I was looking for tarot decks that transcend time, tarot decks that have imagery that were, the culture was not obvious, the that felt like a past life reading. I found this deck, and this deck really, really drew me in. This is an extra book. I found this in a used bookstore on one of the used booksellers. And it has, this is about an 8x10 image. So the cards are really, really little. And the thing about this book, this is a bit like Stephanie Puimun Law did a extra guidebook for the Shadowscapes Tarot. And she has about 4 or 5 pages for every single major card. It's kind of like, I feel like that. So this is an excellent addition to the Labyrinth Tarot, and it really takes you into the creator's intention for making this deck. And not so much in the minors. It is a pip deck, but it does give you astrological associations. It talks about the energy of the deck, the geometry of the deck, and things like that. And there's a little bit in the book also of the creation, the creative process of the deck. So those are all things that I appreciate in the Labyrinth Tarot. And are you shopping? Shopping while you watch? Okay, so perhaps I should go a little bit faster because I do want to get through all these, because for next week I want to really be able to do the top 10. All right, so let's do the two that go this way. So I included these two. And I know Poppy's was in Simon's top 5 companion books. And the thing about, also, I wanted to say something. I don't think Simon mentioned this. Poppy Palin has her own tarot tube channel. And I don't think she completed it, but she started making a lot of movies about every single card, and does a great job at explaining the story behind every card. Oh, and I opened to my favorite card. This is one of those books where you get the background information of what is going on in the card and why the creator chose to create that card. So the categories for each are the image, which is a description of the image, which is really helpful. The story. So the story of what is going on actually in the picture, and then a lengthy description of the meaning. So this definitely is, it's not my favorite shape for a book, because when a companion book is well done, I definitely take it out and put it on my bookshelf. And so the ones like this tend to stand this way on my bookshelf. Yeah. The only thing that I don't believe Poppy does discuss in this book is the pixies in any great detail, because this is another one of those decks, much like the Bonefire, where it's like, where's Waldo? And you look for the pixie, and how the pixie or pixies are interacting with the humans in each of the cards. I think in some cards she does describe it, but not in all of them. This one is a little bit thinner. This is an extra book. At least it was when I got the deck. You have to purchase it. But I felt that it was necessary to purchase it because at the time I didn't have a lot of pip decks and I wanted more information. It's a really beautiful, beautiful guidebook. And I don't believe it was very expensive. And so for that reason alone, if you purchase Tarot of the Trees, it's definitely worth purchasing the extra guidebook. And I know that this deck has come out again recently, and I just wanted to check the back of the book. It's a pretty thin little book though. I don't think it's going to make the top 10, but I did want to mention it tonight. So there are some unique spreads in this book for sure. And she does share with you her background. So I will be reviewing all of these books carefully. My intention was to have this all done for tonight, but I didn't have time. I got lost in my garden. Anyway, so those two facing that way, those are done. How are we doing here? Oh, we're talking about Shadowscapes. I have the Czech version of Shadowscapes. Yeah, it's larger. It's a little bit larger. Alrighty, where should we go? I don't think any top 10 would be without these two books. And I probably won't include both of these in the top 10, but these books are so amazing. And they don't have the same authors, right? This is the couple, this one, right? I'm pretty sure this is the, yeah, Stephanie and Philip Carr-Gom. So let's talk about Druidcraft first. Again, a deck where I purchased without the large guidebook and then afterwards purchased the large guidebook. And I'm going to stop making that mistake. So the thing is though, that I like the cards in the little box and I don't like the big boxes, but if you want the decent guidebook, you need to figure out a way around that, either make bags or something. This book is so worthwhile. And this, I find, is one of those books that gives you the details and the information. Thanks, Ange. I'm reading the haircut comment. That gives you information that you can take away and read with other decks. So not only does it take you on a journey inside the Druidcraft Tarot and offer so many beautiful details into a reading, but it builds your repertoire as a reader. So from this deck, you can take all of this juicy, juicy content and apply it to other decks. And that's one of the things I find that makes a top 10 guidebook. And I would, so sometimes if I'm doing a card study and I will always pull out this and see what Druidcraft has to say about that particular card. I find it's a really good resource and it sits on my shelf with all of my general tarot books because that's how good this book is. The Wildwood is a deck that you probably wouldn't be able to navigate without the book. And if you are beginning to study the Sabbats and beginning to study all of the energy around the wheel of the year, this is an amazing book to accompany your study. It has one of the things that I was going to do, and I will probably come back to this book, and there's so many pages that I want to photocopy and print and put in my journal and just actually do a whole journal for this book. Where is the page? So in this wheel here, I'm sure most of you have this deck, but it describes where each of the major cards sit in the wheel of the year. And it connects the elements, the energy, and the season. And so this is a deck that you can definitely use for timings because the cards are connected to seasons and to Sabbats. And this is one of the reasons I love to work with this deck. This one, there's not a lot out there. And so when a deck is connected in that way, I find it, because a lot of people, when they're asking questions, are asking when. They want to know when. And sometimes I can pick up on that intuitively. Sometimes there's a lot of repeating numbers in a reading. Sometimes in the cards, the seasons are very apparent. And it's like, wow, well, it's going to be in the fall because just look at these cards. But this book has that layer built in. Not this book, this deck has that layer built in. And so I really, really like this deck a lot. And I should go back and dedicate a few months to the study of this. And originally what I did the first time when I first got the book was I took out the cards for each of the Sabbats and put them on my altar. And so that I knew which major arcana cards I was working with at that time. And so it was out for a long time. And I think that's a really nice way to work with it. So you begin to get familiar with, oh, okay, this is the major card for this particular Sabbat, and these are the cards that are around it. Because the energy is also different. The seasons are different. And, do you find that frustrating? Because sometimes there's so many different associations with wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, right? Like swords are associated with winter sometimes. Sometimes because of the air element, they're associated with the fall. And there's different associations for seasons. There's not just like one way. And that is in this particular deck, it is different than I am most familiar with. And so the book is entirely necessary. Oh, we have a few other people coming. Hello. So welcome to Pamela. So the Muse Tarot, Pamela, is the small book, I'm assuming, a small book, not a larger book. One of the things I said when I signed on today, when I came on, is that for this week and next week, I'm only looking at large guidebooks, and then I'm going to do a separate video for little white books. And definitely the Muse Tarot is going to come into that video because it is it's a smaller book. So yeah, I really like that guidebook too. Okay. A Loving Housewife, hello. I'm not sure what deck everybody's talking about here. Pamela says, when questions are challenging, that's cool. Wildwood has it built in. Victorian Faerie has it built in as well too, yes. And that's one of the reasons I go to the Victorian Faerie, and I feel connected to the seasons in the Victorian Faerie. But the Wildwood is the seasons are different. So you really need to be familiar with decks that have seasons, because the seasons, those associations shift from deck to deck. Okay, I'm going to go on. There's a few comments here I want to read, but I'm going to go on because we're 44 minutes in and my pile is still quite large here. Alrighty. I talked over the last little bit about, because I pulled out the Dreamkeepers for my Gratitude Tarot Challenge. I believe this book, is it this one? I know this one has a different cover. not sure if this one has a different cover. So this is a really interesting book. And it's one of those books where I feel that you can take the interpretations in this book and learn a lot. So it checks off that box. Was that the first thing? No, second thing I said. Third thing, I want to learn something. And this is one of those books where I learn something pretty much with every single card. And the associations are really quite something. So in the introduction, she goes through in tremendous detail about her intention for building the deck. And again, I talked about that, just how important and how that helps me to build a connection with the deck. It has an abundance of spreads. Is there an original one? I think they're all pretty much spreads I've seen in other books. This is an interesting one. There's one called the Dream Goal spread. And this is a deck that I bought on Kickstarter. And I was really intrigued with some of the pictures. And then when I got it, it was like, oh my goodness, like, what is this? This is way too weird for me. I can't work with this deck. So I have come back and forth to this deck many times. If you like Deviant Moon, you'd love this deck. I mean, look at this. But why this deck, why I picked it up over the past week was because during the Gratitude Tarot Challenge with Science to Soul Tarot with Jen, I was working with the Full Arcos Tarot, the Ember and Aura, and the Chamonix Tarot. And there was something in there that called me to pick up this because these are all very dreamy decks that are great for working with your dreams. And so that's why I picked it up again. And I was just like, I really like this guidebook. It's just got so much juicy information. So I would highly recommend it if you like that kind of dream journal kind of deck. Oh, okay. So yeah, and reminded me of the Deviant Moon. Alrighty. Well, I picked up this one earlier. Now, this book has a new cover. And I sent an email to MJ to find out if the new edition of the book is just a change in cover or there's anything else that is different within the guidebook. So in the Crow Tarot, you get quite an excellent little white book in the box itself. But this book is different. It's like this is the extra book for the Osho Zen. It's not the book that comes with the deck, and it's different, completely different. So these two fall into that category where you get just much more information, and it is it's kind of brilliant in that regard. So I would recommend both of these guidebooks. She goes into way more information about the background of living in, is it in New York? I'm pretty sure this deck, she lived in New York for a period of time, and a lot of the skyscrapers in the background are referring to that. So yeah, so that's I'm really glad that I purchased the extra book for the Crow Tarot. And if you work with the Osho Zen Tarot and you don't have the extra book, you're missing out on a lot, because the first book, the book that comes with the cards, is, I believe it's written by Deva Padma, who created the cards. And then this one is written by Osho. So, and this one is really old. I think it's 2003. I'm pretty sure it's still available though. 2003. Yeah. So, you know, when I started working, so this deck and the Robin Wood were the first two decks that I spent the most time with. Okay, I see my name a few times here, so I'm gonna go back and see what's going on. Okay, so I'm just looking at the orange here. Jamie, I picked up for the Falarcos Tarot because of your use of it this past week. It is intriguing me. Yeah, I think the Falarcos is, I don't know, it's very much for me anyway, it's been a card at a time. And the whole dream journal thing and going to bed with a card is just so intriguing. And I have found that even with this deck, which I've been using this week, it's like, okay, take me in there. What do I really need to know about the energy of this card? And my card for the last day of the Gratitude Tarot Challenge was the Six of Cups with the swan skeleton, and really exploring about what swan song means. And I've had some amazing downloads and dream experiences when I do that. So when I take a deck like the Falarcos or Dreamkeepers and I take a card and I kind of sit with it before I go to sleep, it's really a beautiful way to journey in to the cards. Yeah, MJ's coming out with an animal deck. I didn't pre-order it. I saw it, but I felt that I have a lot of animal decks and it didn't really call to me. I still need to get that Crow Tarot book. Yeah, it's a really good book. And I love the new cover. The new cover is so pretty. I really do. It has new content. Okay, so that'd be really interesting to compare. And I was hoping, MJ hasn't emailed me back. I hope she does, because I really wanted that information for you tonight, but I don't have it. Maybe I'll get an email back by tomorrow. Okay, so we have a few more on the table here. This is the Llewellyn version of the Gaian Tarot. And just so you know, I gave away my Schiffer version in I think it was in my 1,000 sub giveaway. So I gave away the other one. So the other guidebook is a lot more easy to navigate. It has colored pictures. It has a beautiful spine. And this version, so with the Llewellyn cards, has no colored pictures. It has no thumbnails or anything. However, the content is exactly the same, word for word, exactly the same. And so if you want the Llewellyn cards, this is the book that you get. And it is an absolutely amazing, amazing guidebook. And one of the things that I appreciate in this book is the way that the minors are organized. And there's a few guidebooks that do that, right? They have the minors organized by numbers. So you get all the aces, all the twos, all the threes, all the fours. And I find that really helpful to see all of the fours together and see how the creator built in the energy of the fours. And to me, that really shows me the thought process and how the deck was built. And this is another book that has that she shares her story and talks exactly about the type of pencil crayons that she used in drawing the deck and how the process with the photos and coloring the photos. So I love that. That information is so, I don't know, it's important to me. And that's one of the reasons that I bought the Herb Crafter Tarot, was because I was sold on her backstory. And I knew the quality was going to be there with the herb crafter. And it was. So yeah, so that's kind of important. Alrighty, I have the Mariel is definitely going to be in there as far as important guidebooks. There's a few YouTubers that have done really good series on the Mariel Tarot, and what do I want to say? Those videos have been really important to me as far as my understanding. Oh, I wanted to go to the court cards here. The introduction to the court cards. So I really like it when deck creators include charts, because in the Mariel Tarot, Mary White switches up the energy with the decks, with the suits. And so in order to understand her choices and the way she organized the suits, I'm just looking at this. What is the difference here? There was something that was so different. It wasn't that chart. I think it had to do with the kings being associated with fire and the pages, and the knights being associated with air. She does it the opposite, and then talks about it in this book. And so I'm sure all of you that have the Mariel would agree that this is a deck that you absolutely need to have the guidebook for. And there is so much detail and so much information about the mythology that you wouldn't necessarily be aware of if you didn't have the guidebook. And it's one of those guidebooks that you can read over and over and over and know that it's going to take a long time to absorb all the information, especially if it's not a deck that you work with for 6 months or like a whole year, because it just has so many beautiful layers. And one of the things that she says in the opening of the guidebook is that this is a deck that's built on all of the systems. And so it's a blending of the RWS, the Thoth, the Marseille style. And so we have, I don't know, it's truly incredible. And how in the world did she pack all that information into this little tiny book is really, really quite something. And so that's a book definitely worth mentioning. And then I'm looking here. I think there's a few that, I don't know, they're definitely not going to make the top 10. But I have to mention the Llewellyn Guidebook. And this deck for the majors, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Not so much in the minors. And I don't really, in this deck, the minors do get, the meanings do vary. So it's in that regard, the guidebook is useful. But the brilliant part is the details that Anne-Maria Ferguson has included with the stories that are associated with each of the major cards. So for example, if you don't have this deck, and I'm sorry, I didn't think the sun was going to be shining on me tonight. So, and now you'll be able to see, so I'm just going to talk. So she goes through the legend. So each of the major cards is associated with a legend. And you get the legend. And then there are a couple of pages talking about the meaning in relation to the legend and also in relation to the Rider-Waite-Smith. However, that is only for the first 22 cards. It's not for the minors. And the minors are set up very much like a basic RWS deck. And you get a teeny tiny description. And you get no background information on the scene or the historical references at all. So I would say that this book is amazing for the majors, but not so much for the minors. And that's why I purchased the Arthurian Tarot by the same creator, Anna Maria Ferguson, because in the Arthurian Tarot, in the guidebook, which I didn't include here, why didn't I include it? And this is really interesting. So the Arthurian has a legend associated with all 78 cards. And I have done a video where I talk about the Llewellyn and the Arthurian Tarot. And so you can look at that. One is a very silvery deck. One is a very gold deck. One seems very cold and lunar. One is a lot warmer. They're very different, very, very different decks. However, it's almost too much to have 78 legends in a deck. It's a bit like I have the Spanish version of the Fairy Tale Tarot. There's so many fairy tales I don't have the background information on. And I find sometimes I go into the pictures and I definitely read the story through the pictures. But the Fairy Tale Tarot is one of those decks that's like, it's mind-boggling. It's too much. I feel a little bit that way about the John Bauer sometimes. Like I want more hours in the day to read all the stories and read all the legends so that I can, if I'm going to use it in a reading, I can build in that layer with the story as well as any background information I have on that particular card. So yeah. All right. Antique Anatomy. If you have Oracle of Oddities, I think you would really appreciate this book because Oracle of Oddities does not come with any sort of guidebook. And it's, I actually just very recently purchased this deck. I haven't had any versions of this one. And I am going to be reviewing it this week and looking through it in more detail because I actually just got it because Jen brought it up and I forgot about this and how I use the Oracle of Oddities quite a bit. And I'm definitely going to use this tarot deck with the Oracle of Oddities. And so this is one of those decks that has explains the connections between the Page, Knight, Queen, and King of the suit and how those are connected. I'm really, really hoping she goes into talking about the flowers. If she doesn't talk about the flowers, well, this is not going to be a great guidebook, but I'm hoping that she does. And I'm also hoping that this guidebook helps me to understand some of my confusion with a couple of the cards in the Oracle of Oddities, which I love. So yeah. Okay, can you hang in there? I have 4 more. And next week I'm going to decide 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unless of course you encourage me to put another one in. Alrighty. Oh, I paused the chat. Oh, Jonathan's checking out. Okay, good night, Jonathan. Alrighty, so this was on somebody's recommendation because they told me this was an excellent book, so I haven't even broken the spine on this one. So I'm going to review this guidebook. So thank you. Looks really, really intriguing, and I am excited to have a look at this one. Shadowland is also fairly new to my collection, and I have, people have been raving about this guidebook and raving about this deck, and so I kind of bought into the excitement over Shadowland, and I'm not sure that this is a deck that I'm going to be using regularly. It's probably a deck that I will end up giving away. But I'm going to give it a go. And I've been playing with the cards and you know, again, we have some headless people. And so this might be one of those dreamy decks, you know, that you need to take your time to kind of explore into the mystery of it all. And the last two books on the table, I'm just going to say briefly about the Shadowscapes, because this, again, is a book that is completely necessary to understanding the deck. Now, I know the deck is available now without the guidebook, but I can't imagine just having the little white book. And because you could not make your way through I don't think you could make your way through without having all this beautiful description of the cards. And then you get a large drawing. So for those of you that have just the cards with a little white book, you're really missing out on something. And on top of that, I would purchase the extra book, which is the artwork of the 22 majors, which is written by Stephanie Pouilly-Moonlaw. Definitely going to recommend that one. The author explains a bit about her background, and the book is wonderful as she breaks it down and also adds questions you can ask. Oh, okay, regarding Shadowland. Yeah, oh, that's right. So there's journal prompts in this, right? The author is Monica Bodurski. Yes, so you can see, so even for the minors, there's a journal prompt, reflections. Yeah. Hey, Nora. All right. So, okay. So the last book I'm going to share with you tonight. I do not have any crystal skulls in my collection. I think the only intrigue I had was that Indiana Jones movie with the crystal skull. Well, no, not Indiana Jones. Was that Indiana? No, it was a Harrison Ford movie with the crystal skulls. And I know a little bit, but not a lot. I know about the connection to the alien connection. I understand that. I also understand the connection to higher consciousness, of course. That's kind of a no-brainer. But I don't have any, and I've never worked with them. And the first time that I saw this deck, I thought, whoa, what is that? And I was not interested at all. So I haven't even gone through the cards yet, just arrived. So I want to tell you why I purchased this deck. And I purchased the extra book. 78 cards. I can't even read it, it's backwards. Rooted in Life, Death, and Gold. And this looks like a really, really beautiful book. So why I purchased this deck? Multiple reasons. One is that I want to support creators who create decks about their own culture. You know that I'm a yoga instructor. I have a tremendous interest in Indo-Canadian, Indian culture. And my familiarity, my study of Hinduism, because Hinduism is deeply connected with yogic teachings, I'm fairly knowledgeable. I know a little bit about the Sikh practice because I had a lot of Sikh students when I was a high school teacher. My Muslim awareness is even less. And so when I learned that Amrit was Canadian, and when I learned that this deck was deeply connected to the Punjab culture, I was so very, very intrigued. And I want to tell you a story about marigolds and being in India and being surrounded by marigolds. And so that's why I purchased this deck, is because I want to learn more about the Punjab culture, and I want to understand about the skulls and all of the connections to the Punjab culture. And like the fool has a turban, and he talks about the kind of turban that the fool is wearing. And it's like, okay, I don't know anything about turbans. I don't know about the different way that turbans are tied. I don't know that it means something different. So it's like, yes, educate me, and I am going to really enjoy working with this deck and studying and expanding my knowledge, because I want to know, I want to learn, I want to understand. And so it just looks like a really, really good guidebook. Do any of you guys have the Marigold Tarot, and have you been working with it? I'm really curious. Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, not Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's this, I'm pretty sure it's Harrison Ford, and the crystal skulls are all in this room, and they go in, and then the crystal skulls light up, and they create this connection. Indiana Jones, and no, it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's another one. Kyle says, I've seen Marigold and book on Mixtress Ray's channel. Really nice. No, it's not Temple of Doom. For next week, I'll get you the name of that. Get you the name of that movie. So yeah, so these are the 22 books that I'm going to narrow down to top 10. I'm going to put them in order, and I will, I'm going to list them on a poll on the community tab, and then give you an opportunity to add any other books that you want to throw in or you think should be in the mix. Because I know there's a few others, but I went through all my large tarot books, and these are the 22 that I narrowed it down to. So, and for those of you that came on a little bit later, I'm going to do Little White Book top 5 in another video, in another chat. So this is just about large companion books. So companion books that either come with a deck or you purchase separately. So yeah. So do you guys have any questions, or I'm surprised Kyle hasn't Googled the movie yet and figured out what the name of the movie is. It's not the Temple of Doom. It's not the Temple of Doom. I'll have to. Is there a movie called Indiana Jones and the? No, because the Raiders of the Lost Ark is a trilogy, and it's not in that trilogy. It's another movie. Anyway. Whatever. I'll figure it out, and I'll share it with you at another point. So thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. And I will get that poll done tomorrow, and then you can vote, you can make comments. And like I said, if you want to add any other books to the mix, let me know. And then next week, I'm going to go through and let you know why I chose my 10 through 1. So yeah, and this is going to be just, me. I know I saw Simon's top 5, and yeah, it's not going to be based on that at all. And I will, if I feel that something in his top 5 is in my top 5, it'll be in my top 5. I'm not going to exclude a book because somebody else already put it in their top 5. So yeah. So thanks for being here tonight, you guys. IT guy, hi. How are you, Joseph? Oh, you're welcome, Nora. Yeah. Okay. So I will talk to you soon, and you can look for the. Make sure if you have rung the bell and subscribe to the channel, you should get a notification when I put that up on my community tab. Okay. So have a good evening, and I'll talk to you soon. Stay well. Namaste.